Welcome in, everybody, to another week of UFL Weekly, where we sit around and we chat all things UFL Weekly. I'm Kyle Krajewski, joined by this lovely hunk of meat, Zach Cole. Zach, how are you doing, man?
You will not objectify me. First off, I'm more than a hunk of meat. No, I'm joking. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I didn't have as good of a week last week as you did, but I'm doing okay. I'm fired up about March Madness this weekend, but I think you should tell everyone a little bit more about where you were on our off week last week.
Uh, Football, probably the least football related location. I was in Iceland last week. Left 2 days after the most recent, I guess, lava explosion that came. Got to see that. That was actually beautiful. But
Mm,
no, Iceland was beautiful. Iceland was incredibly just a force of nature.
mhm.
Just beautiful to see, beautiful to experience. Happy I was able to take the week and see it. And now I'm back with single digit days before UFL kicks off. And I'm pumped, happy to be back, happy to be talking to some football, happy I had the break, and happy to be here.
Yeah, this is like we're in a great sports time period right now. I mean,
Oh,
obviously all the NFL fans are living the high of free agency right now, heading into the draft. It's beautiful season for football. Basketball is in full swing. Obviously, we got March Madness coming up. Opening day is in about a week and a day from now, which is pretty cool. So like this is full swing. We got hockey going on. I don't want to short hockey either.
how did I miss that opening day weekend for baseball is the same weekend as kickoff for the UFL?
Very true. Yep, very true.
What a weekend of sports we've got.
Gonna be
What a
great. And
week of
Easter.
what a week of sports we've got. Yeah, Easter football, Easter baseball. We've got March Madness
Mhm.
right here. Couldn't have said it better. Beautiful
Can't
kind of
wait.
chunk of sports world happening right now.
Yeah,
But
big time.
as of this recording, it is now we're recording this March 20th, releasing March 21st. So when you're listening to this, we're in single digit days until UFL kicks off. We've got kickoff on March 30th. So as of release date, we are 9 days away from UFL kickoff. It is like I can sniff it. It's coming in with the spring waves. The daffodils are rising in the front yard, and with it comes some UFL spring football, and I'm pumped.
What's funny is I'm gonna put a damper on that. There was actually a snow squall up here at my house this afternoon, so I have like a half an inch of snow out on the ground right now. But it'll be 70 later on this week, and that'll all be gone. So, but no, you were spot on. We're coming into the spring football season, baseball season. It's just all kind of it's lining up beautifully, and it's gonna be a good couple months.
Yeah, I guess speaking of weather, it was consistently mid 30s, 40 degrees Fahrenheit out in Iceland. And seeing the Saturday weather report back where we currently are, and it was hitting 60, 70 degrees, I was so
Yeah.
sad. Being like, get me home. I want to experience that weather. And then I get off the plane and at JFK, and it's like a brutal 20 degrees. I was like, how is it warmer in Iceland right now? But spring's here. Spring's coming. It's knocking on my doorstep. The wind is actually like about to knock the house down, but we've got spring's here.
And
Spring football.
it's officially spring too. We hit that date in the calendar where
We did.
free Rita's Day. It is now spring. So let's start looking ahead.
Let's start looking ahead. 9 days from now, we've got UFL kickoff, and this weekend on March 23rd, we have roster finalization. Uh, Current UFL rosters must be trimmed down to 50 players. So we're gonna see some roster cuts this weekend. Not as much as we've seen in previous weeks, but we're gonna
Mhm.
see a couple players get a little notched off of the rosters. Kind of see these teams finalize, see some final rosters, final lineups come to shape. Um, and before we get into kind of the rest of everything today, we're UFL Weekly. You can follow and subscribe and just say hello wherever you listen or watch us. If you are watching us on YouTube, you can listen to us on any podcast platform you listen to podcasts. And if you're listening to us, you can also find us and look at our beautiful faces on YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter at UFL_weekly. And here we go. Let's talk some just what's been happening in training camp around the league. The UFL officially announced the championship game on June 16th will be played in St. Louis. And I think that is quite honestly the ideal spot for this league to have its championship game. St. Louis last year for the Battlehawks was just obliterating UFL, XFL records for attendance. You constantly saw fill the dome, get the third level unlocked. They were filling this stadium as best as they could, better than any other team in the XFL and especially USFL were. So I think, you get a championship in St. Louis, where a city that craves football and can show up and watch that game. I think that's the ideal spot for it.
Yeah, it's kind of a centralized location too. I mean, it's obviously a little more north than the majority of the league, but I mean, you got the Showboats and the Stallions who are a couple states away, and then you got the three Texas teams, and then the other teams are up above them towards the north. So it is kind of a good central location as compared to putting it in DC, which is all the way to one extreme, or all the way down in San Antonio, which is another extreme. So yeah, and it's a great stadium, and I think the fans will rally regardless of if St. Louis makes it to the championship or not. I think that that's a city that's just been kind of longing for football, and we saw it last year. They proved that they will show up and will show out when football games are being played in their city.
Yeah, and they are craving some more spring football. The past few iterations of football that have taken place in St. Louis, they've just shown up pumped and not necessarily knocked down or like upset that iteration didn't work out. They just keep showing up to the next iteration of spring football, pumped and excited to see whatever product of football that city is going to get that season.
Yeah. And they've really kind of deserved something since the Rams got kind of taken away from them a few years ago, and they've such a good sports city. You look at the Cardinals and the Blues. I mean, it's a really, really rich sports city. So it's good to see that they do have spring football coming their way again.
Absolutely. Some upsetting news that I was genuinely heartbroken to see. DC Defenders running back Abram Smith tore his ACL and is out for the season. And I'm personally heartbroken as a Defenders fan, but I'm also heartbroken for just the future of this young player. I saw that he is 25 and this is his third ACL tear. I think first on this leg. So insane. I don't know how that's possible. How you can consistently tear. How we tore the other ACL twice, but that's a different conversation. Just upset that Abram Smith had an incredible last year in the XFL, didn't get a chance to return and pop off again in the UFL. However, I think he is just as motivated to return next year and just return to dominance.
Yeah, and Abram Smith was a guy who almost doubled the next closest guy in rushing yards to him, which was Jacques Patrick. So, I mean, it's a huge loss for this team. But we saw last year that Teamu found a rushing knack. Raquel Armstead was there with them for a little bit last season. It really kind of. I don't want to diminish this injury at all, and absolutely our heart goes out to him. It's so hard, dealing with just those chronic knee injuries. Bless you. But it really is. Hopefully, I think it's a system where they can pick up the next man in and just kind of plug and play him, and hopefully they should see pretty similar production. But again, I don't want to belittle the performance from one of the best players in the league last year.
Yeah. So in response to, I guess, the injury, DC went out and signed former Stallions running back Zaquandre White. Is that Quandre White? I messed up the white somehow. who played for the Stallions last season. I think he just had a few games, but he had a game where he I think had 2 touchdowns. So he's a guy who can play and has played
Yeah.
recently. Also looking for that shot. So he's going to
Mhm.
step in, probably not as a starter, maybe not. There's still some backfield competition, I think, in DC. That I think we'll see finalized this weekend with roster cuts. But kind of seeing DC fill in that backfield to kind of say like, all right, who's replacing Abram? Because it was Abram and then a backfield. So tough shoes to
It's
fill, tough shoes to try to fill in, but DC signed Zaquandre White to try to fill them.
I was just gonna hop in real quick. It's kind of funny, like how hard of a time we're having with really giving details because we don't know any roster construction right now. Like for all we know, they could have 3 running backs on the roster behind Abram, so it's not that big of a lot. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
challenging to say anything now for sure. So hopefully after these final cuts are made, we'll have a little bit more clear of a picture.
Yeah, the UFL website does its best. If I were to be a little upset about how the league is handling the roster, I'm looking at the DC roster right now, and sure I could export this list and sort it myself, but it is in alphabetical order. So I see a D back, D lineman, long snapper, D lineman, linebacker. Let's see if I do a count. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. I just recounted several running backs on this backfield, but we'll see. I think as rosters are finalized this weekend, um, I think we'll kind of see these teams put out like a flashy graphic of this is our team, this is what
Yeah,
our offense looks like, this is what our
right.
defense looks like, and I am absolutely looking forward to seeing those.
Yeah, and speaking of with UFL and kind of their releases, little sidebar here, but they released the app this week as well, which is kind of cool. So, and last year, Kyle, I know you and I and a bunch of our listeners had a great time with that, with the pick'em that they featured, and that's not necessarily featured yet on there, but I'm hoping that maybe we can get that back and we can have some fun again this year.
Yeah, if you are new listening to us, we were XFL Weekly last year. So this year as UFL Weekly with the app, they had this really cool, like Zach said, pick'em game that we ran, and we had our own group on there. And it was basically over under yards passing in the first quarter, kind of stuff like that. That was really exciting. That I hope we kind of see an iteration of this year, whether it's with that same app platform that they had with the XFL last season, or if it's something completely different. I just thought it was
Mhm.
really cool to have that game within the app that I'm really hoping that they have this year.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
And it's actually a pretty sleek app.
It
I
is.
was
It's
poking
very nice.
around when they released it. So if you like just tapping on random stuff on your phone, give it a download.
Mhm.
Back to little training camps updates. The Birmingham Stallions signed former first round defensive end Taco Charlton, a name familiar to NFL fans as a Dallas Cowboy, drafted, I think, Zach, 2017. And
2017. Yep.
yep. And finds himself on the Stallions, hoping to kind of make a name for himself again. And I'm rooting for him. Go Taco.
Yeah, it's just kind of the same thing that we've seen with a bunch of other players. NFL is a big jump for some guys from straight out of college going into the league, and sometimes guys don't cut it, and they're still of above average talent and still probably belong on a roster somewhere. But hopefully, the spring ball gives him a chance to figure some things out, and maybe get himself back into the league eventually.
Uh, Something similar note, just about these guys kind of turning to spring football, bringing some extra tape to their film. Uh, Jay Sternberger had a really cool tweet the other day that I just thought was interesting. I'm going to just say it word for word. He said, I say this with respect to everyone's process and journey, but it's crazy how many players I've reached out to about joining the UFL and all have left me on red. Now they have no futures deal and no spring film. I hope this year we can change the perspective on spring football. And from his perspective, it almost feels like we don't get this often as viewers of the sport. But
Mhm.
as a player, we see a player actively saying, guys, like this can only help you. For you that is on your ending your rookie deal and not really finding prospects on the open free agency market, join spring football. Add to that tape. Make a name for yourself elsewhere, and just make yourself more known to these scouts and bring more to the table. And I thought that was really interesting to see tweeted by Jace. Um, and just I loved seeing that.
Yeah, and if these guys come into this league and they just absolutely dominate and can't be stopped in the league, that's just a wake up call to NFL GMs and NFL organizations that maybe these guys do deserve a second chance and do belong in the NFL instead of the UFL. So I think that maybe part of the what's the word I'm looking for? Part of the uh, I'm blanking. I don't know. The hesitancy from these players is that it's really kind of been an up and down product for the last 10, 15 years. Just the concept of spring football itself. And if the UFL can really solidify itself as being a legitimate league, I think that we're going to see over time more players turn to it as a second platform, a secondary platform to get more tape, get more film, and kind of help develop themselves.
Absolutely. And again, that was just because I feel like I didn't preface him enough. Jay Sternberger, tight end for the Birmingham Stallions, and to add on to his resume, USFL champion, USFL receiving touchdowns leader in 2023, and all USFL tight end in 2023. So this isn't just some bum I saw tweeting on Twitter or
Yeah.
on X. This is a known commodity in it's not the right phrase, a known guy in the spring football universe.
Yeah,
So
and some
thanks,
time with the
Jace.
Packers too, so people will definitely
Yeah,
know him from there. Yeah.
yeah, he's got a few teams under his belt in the NFL.
Mhm.
So going back down, returning to our sheet here. Just today I saw two QBs named, or one was named today, one was named the other day, but final named starters for a couple UFL teams, and I think there's a few like I think Teamu is like the guaranteed starter. I think there are some guaranteed starters that they haven't made announcements on yet, but we'll probably see that in the coming days with roster construct roster.
Presumably McCarron too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Um, but the Renegades named Luis Perez as their starter. Just kind of coming out and just Stoops coming out, clearing the air, saying, "This is our guy." And then the Roughnecks named Jarrett Garantano as their starting quarterback. So just seeing some teams make their announcements, some head coaches just come out and say, "We've got our guy. Our QB competition is over. Uh, we've got him."
Yeah, we were talking a little bit pre-show. I remember watching Guarantano when he was at Tennessee, and he was just kind of a fun quarterback to watch with a lot of potential. So hopefully we get to see him show off a little bit with the Roughnecks. And then Luis Perez, is it any real surprise that the guy who
Yeah,
won the XFL championship gets the starting gig again? I mean, it wasn't always smooth sailing for him last year, so it's I guess it is kind of good to see that he's solidified himself as the starter and the leader of that team.
yeah, just happy things to see here.
Yeah.
Final note here, which I think we'll have a few comments to say on. Just thoughts on expansion. I had this interestingly written up. Defenders DC, defensive coordinator, which could have also been the DC of Defenders or DC Defenders DC. Um, Greg Williams on his own podcast hinted on expansion teams in the UFL. I think the way he phrased it was with the successful 2024 season, we could see an expansion of up to 12 teams next year and then up to 16 the following years or in the upcoming years. And I think I just want to pose the question to you, or pose this kind of conversation to you, Zach, as like, how do you see that working out? One, which teams like or which cities do you think could get a spring football team? And also like Do you think that's too, I guess, aggressive of an expansion for this league? I guess I'll give my personal opinion on that. I think that's too fast. I'd like to see maybe 2 years with this 18 process, see it be successful, see it grow this year and into the next. And then from there, be like, boom, all right, we've got this game plan down. Let's bring in another 4 teams. Maybe it's Orlando, where they had the Guardians, or Pittsburgh and Philly both had USFL teams. Maybe those are like eager for some spring football action. And just kind of see where I guess that grows or where kind of things are taking shape in these next 2 years, primarily, and just kind of get some ground built before thinking of how the roof's going to look.
Yeah, I am totally in agreement with you on the rapid expansion. I do think that 16 is too drastic of a jump and too quickly. I think that in order for the UFL to continue, I think they need to really develop a strong product before they consider kind of spreading it out even further. I think you really kind of have to have a good base that you know is going to hold up to any challenges that might arise when you decide to go outside of the comfort zone, which is what they would be doing by expanding to other cities. Now, don't get me wrong, they could still hit gold and could end up expanding into a city that just thrives and absolutely takes off and becomes their number one earning, franchise within the UFL. But I think that the risk at this point is higher than the reward if they're making that big of a jump. I would suggest that maybe they jump to 10 teams or 12 teams in the shorter term, and then eventually probably build their way up. And we've talked about it all off season too, Kyle. There's definitely enough players right now that want to
Totally.
play and that could fill rosters at least for 2 more teams, maybe even 4. So with seeing, we were messing around and joking about the Brahmas and how many guys they were signing, but there is interest for it. So I do think that from a team building, roster building standpoint, I don't think it would water down the product at all by having players that aren't necessarily up to that level participating. I think that there's plenty of good players that could play in spring football.
Yeah, and I think what we'll see potentially a successful 2024, and with that, another great, probably even more expansive, just in like interest and excitement, 2025 season, and then from there, it's just like, all right, we've got much larger player pool because you've got 2 years more of just players being like, oh, this is a legit thing. You've got 2 more years of players coming out of college, ready to just play more and get some more tape under their belt. And then you've just got 2 more years of just general audience and eyes on this spring football product. So I'm hoping they pump the brakes and slow down and ease their way into expansion if that is at all on the horizon or being talked about internally on the UFL side. But I'd really hope they slow that down, ease it in. Don't just slam down the books and say, "All right, cool, we're doubling this league up in the next 1.5 years." But let's hope they slow that down.
Yeah, and I just stumbled across a really cool thread from Pro Catch YouTube on YT on Twitter. He did a UFL future expansion thread, and I've just kind of been scrolling through it. And some of the locations he brought up: San Diego, Ohio, New York, bringing back the Guardians. Another team in Orlando, maybe not necessarily the Orlando Guardians, but Oklahoma City, Chicago. Like there's really limitless kind of potential to expand the UFL, and I think there are several markets where that would be a great possibility to make happen. But I think for now they need to really focus on developing their current product and making it as good as it possibly can be, and not running into like we saw with the XFL. Excuse me, like we saw with the XFL last year, not running into financial issues after 1 year. I think that's a big focus.
Here's hoping you're listening to us, Dwayne Johnson.
Just little old us.
Little old us. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, Zach. That's all I've got for today.
That's a-okay. But I'm excited for next week's show. So go ahead. Why don't you tease that?
Next week's show, week of kickoff, we are doing our consistently teased which UFL team to root for. We're going to go through team by team, just run off a couple bullet points on why you should root for them. Why should you be a Birmingham Stallions fan? Why should you be a Houston Roughnecks fan? Why should you be a San Antonio Brahmas fan? We'll let you know. We'll give you all the details, some like pros for why that team should have your heart. Beautifully said. But we're just going to think about it. You're coming into this league. Maybe you were a Philadelphia Stars fan. Who are you going to root for now in the UFL? Are you going to stay on the USFL side? Are you going to switch into the XFL division? Do you have no idea who any of these teams are? Are you new to spring football in general? We've got you covered. We're going to let you know which team you can root for. We're not going to say, like, this is the team, the one team you should root for. We're going to give you some reasons to root for them all. So you could say, like, that one's a really compelling argument. Or that one has a little bit less love for them. I'm going to root for them. You make your call. We're just here to help you make your own decision. And maybe Zach will make his decision that week too. I've already laid my claim on the Defenders, and I think Zach will make his grand debut of his UFL love next week.
I think so. And as any of our XFL Weekly listeners know from last year, I was a Houston Roughnecks fan, but now that they're a different franchise, I don't know. I'm feeling a little weird about the whole thing. So we'll see. I think I might be jumping ship. So, but what better time to do it than when the league is completely new? It's a brand new league. Now is the time.
Perfect example of somebody else who may be looking for a new team. Maybe you're a Roughnecks fan and you're just like, I'm in, but maybe I want to look somewhere else. Totally up to you. Maybe you're coming in as a Defenders fan as well, and you're just like, ooh, I've got all these new teams to root for. Let me clean slate. Who am I rooting for? And we're going to help you make that decision the best you can. So that is next week, which team to root for or why you should root for each team. And we'll let you know. Maybe you're just a spring football fan and you're just here waving a UFL flag.
Get a hat for everyone.
Football. And it's either way, we're here to help. We're here to educate you on both the UFL and the teams of the UFL.
Yep.
All right, gang. Thank you for tuning in. We are once again UFL Weekly. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, star, subscribe, give us a heart, give us 2 hearts, give us a 1.5 stars.
All the shapes.
Let us know your thoughts. All shapes and sizes. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure chatting some UFL with you. Talk to you next week.
See ya.